Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, how to get 30, how to get 20, 20, 20, how to get 20, 20, how to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Nature documentaries give us an incredible inside look at the lives of other species, both in how different and similar they are to humans. Parenthood, for example, looks so instinctual for animals such as orangutans and other primates. They give birth and then immediately take care of their young, making it look as easy as breathing. If you've spoken with new parents recently, you know that the human experience isn't quite the same. It's hard and new and has a huge learning curve. So what makes gorillas naturally better at parenting? Well, Dr. Sarah Blaffer Hrdy says they aren't. In fact, wild animals have just as big of a learning curve that many of us don't realize.
Primiparous female primates, that is first-time mothers, they lose most of their babies because they're not very good mothers. But they get better. And this is why chimpanzee males actually prefer mating with older, experienced, multiparous, mini-baby females than young ones.
Hrdy is an anthropologist, primatologist, and author of Father Time, A Natural History of Men and Babies. She says that while Charles Darwin may have popularized the belief that females have a natural maternal instinct, it's not that simple.
People talk about maternal instinct, but mothers too learn to care, except over the course of gestation, pregnancy and birth, and certainly breastfeeding afterwards, lactation. They are primed to respond to cues from baby by changes in their hormone levels.
So why has it been believed for thousands of years that parenting, a learned behavior for all animals, isn't something that men can learn as well? During pregnancy and birth, a woman's hormones like progesterone, prolactin, and oxytocin increase. But what's only now being understood is that this can happen in men as well. Sadly, Hrdy says science wasn't even researching this possibility until recently, even though it's been shown to happen in animals.
We've known since 1980 that prolactin levels go up in male marmosets when they are caring for babies. They're primates, but we didn't look in humans because we thought, well, this doesn't happen, But in 2000, 2 women in Canada did a real pilot study looking at men in a Lamaze class who were expecting babies, and they tested their prolactin and testosterone and oxytocin levels. And all the changes were in the right direction.
But the findings wouldn't be solidified until nearly a decade later when Lee Gettler compared men's hormone levels as children to the levels when they were married, and then finally after the birth of their first baby. It showed that testosterone decreased a little with marriage and then plummeted after becoming a father, but would recover over time. Testosterone levels lower in new mothers as well. A few years later, a scientist who had been studying the bonds between infants and parents was able to measure the brain activity in mothers and fathers.
And what she found is when a father is helping his wife care for his baby, neural circuits in evolutionary newer parts of his brain, in the frontal cortex, the parts of your brain where you kind of register social behavior of others and kind of make a decision how you're going to respond to judgment centers and so forth. Those parts are stimulated in these fathers deciding, am I going to help? How much?
Then they took mothers completely out of the equation and looked at the brain activity of fathers in same-sex relationships to see what happened when 2 men were the primary caretakers in a family.
What they found was not only were the newer brain portions stimulated, but so were these ancient circuits in the most ancient parts of our brain that register primary emotions. These are the parts of the brain, it's like the hypothalamus and the amygdala, that are responding in mothers when they care for babies. Whoa. There just weren't any big significant differences between what was going on in the brains of these primary caretaking men and what was going on in the brains of mothers.
So if men have always had this caretaking capability wired into their brains, why have they taken a back seat to mothers? It's been well documented that having an involved father leads to better outcomes for kids. So why are fathers only now sharing the responsibility? Hrdy says men in the 1800s had started to have better relationships with their children, but only the older kids. Infants were still reserved solely for mothers.
Men in Western societies, instead of feeling like they kind of owned their wives and their children, were protectors of them, but also completely their bosses. Fathers saw themselves as guiding their children's moral development. But again, it was always men and older children. It was thought that babies was really the bailiwick of mothers only. And then get to the 20th century, you actually, over the course of the 20th century, start to find what the historian Robert Griswold calls new fathers, fathers who are much more involved with their children, signing up to be Boy Scout leaders and going to parent-teacher conferences and seeing themselves as really involved, but again, not doing a whole lot of baby care.
However, when anthropologists studied African communities during this same time, what they found was shocking. These men who spent their time hunting and providing for their families still spent a lot of time at camp around the babies. In fact, Hrdy says the Aka people in the Congo showed some of the highest rates of paternal care anyone had ever seen.
Hello, I'm Anthony Anderson. When UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, was founded 80 years ago, they hoped they would change this nation for the better, and they have. As a proud alum of an HBCU, in fact, Howard University, I'm an advocate for HBCUs. I support the work that UNCF does for students of color, scholarships, and internships for 50,000 deserving students each year. Visit uncf.org today, and remember, a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
If you're struggling to lose weight, you've probably heard about weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound, and you might be wondering if they're right for you. Meet PlushCare, a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. If you qualify, they can safely prescribe you medication from the comfort of your own home. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weight-loss. That's plushcare.com/weight-loss. plushcare.com/weight-loss.
But it wasn't a lot of hands-on care. It was mostly men in close proximity to babies a lot of time, but they became very attuned to their babies. They kind of sense what the babies were feeling and needing.
So the question becomes, what shifted so that men in today's Western society are finally able to fully embrace their role as caring and dedicated fathers?
The short answer is a lot has changed in our society. And gender roles the straitjackets around gender roles are a lot looser now. And men feel like they can do it. They're perhaps under some pressure to do it if their wives are working more. And often their wife might be responsible for a good chunk of the family's income. And this changes everything.
However, this isn't the first time in history that women are the main providers. Back in the hunting and gathering days, Hrdy says women provided around 60% of the community's calories, which means that other cultural shifts have helped push us over the edge today. Hrdy says the various women's movements, like being able to vote, own property, and financially support themselves, were main factors at play.
By the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century, women were asking more of their husbands. Birth control had a lot to do with it. Women could decide whether or not they were going to have a baby. And if men wanted more children, they had to convince wives that they were going to have perhaps more help. And then there was all the technology that was changing. We have baby bottles now, and we have breast pumps. We have formula that are relatively safe. And for the last 200 million years, the only way babies were going to survive was if someone, meaning their mother, nursed them and produced this white gold that babies needed to survive.
But while this may be one of the first times men are able to be a part of this type of infant care in human history, Hrdy says we've seen it before in our ancient ancestors. To put it all into context, we have to go back more than 250 million years ago, before mammals even existed.
When our ancestors were more like fish or reptiles, there wasn't breastfeeding. And there was external fertilization, meaning males would fertilize eggs after they had been secreted by the mother. And those males often are doing most of the care. And so there were, among our earliest ancestors back in these watery worlds, neural circuits in the brains of men for responding to the cues of eggs and fry and tadpoles and baby fish that needed their attention, their protection mostly.
We can still see this today in creatures like the seahorse. The males carry the pregnancy and give birth, all while experiencing similar hormonal changes that are seen in human female pregnancies.
The only way to describe it is as maternal, but these are males. They're definitely seahorse males.
The point is that caretaking is natural and has been hardwired into the brains of both men and women. So even though society has fleeting ideas on what it means to be a man, Hrdy argues that the biological response to being an engaged father has always been constant.
There's nothing unnatural about paternal care, that males retain within them these ancient potentials. They haven't been awoken until recently because of all the time men are spending in very close proximity to babies. I call that the tipping point. The TIP, the time and intimate proximity, seems to kind of trigger ancient responses in males.
We're only just beginning to scratch the surface of paternal research. Up until the late 90s and early 2000s, people had trouble publishing their work on this topic because no one believed it could be real. And now that we're finding that the male brain changes in nearly identical ways to the female brain, Hrdy says it's time to give fathers a chance at caretaking.
It might take a little bit more time and intimate proximity in a man who hasn't undergone gestation and birth to get these things, but it's there. The potential for nurturing is there. And men are losing out, I think, in opportunities to find this source of satisfaction in their life, and in many cases, a new source of meaning.
Hrdy's book, Father Time, is available now wherever books are sold. For more information about Dr. Sarah Blaffer Hrdy and all of our guests, visit radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Elizabeth Westfield. This segment is brought to you by Capital One. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One, N.A., member FDIC.